Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge here with another one of these showcase and gameplay videos. This time we're going to be talking about Estacion Kachidoki. I think this is one of the strongest decks to come out of DZ-16. I've been testing it from fairly early on, like shortly after the reveals. It stuck out to me pretty immediately as one of the premier users of the new draw triggers because of all the defensive tools the deck has access to, and that works well with having 820k shields, and it also works. It also has like a bunch of other ways to have damage reach, so having less crits isn't as much of a concern for the deck, I feel. This build is a bit different from the typical one you've been seeing floating around in the deck's recent success. The key point is the Solitario. Most of this is pretty similar to decks you've probably seen, topping the recent events. But I haven't seen any lists on 2 Solitario, and I think that's very strange, because it's pretty easy on Kachidoki turns to line up double Kachidoki, and into tanky decks, that can be pretty important. It can be pretty important to be able to do that, and makes you very tanky as well, because if you can end on 2 Solitarios and you declare defense, that is an absurd amount of defensive, like, guaranteed value. On top of the like 9-10 card hands you're typically ending on. So yeah, this is slightly different from an early build I was testing that I probably showed in the draw trigger video. Yeah, I showed it in the draw trigger video. I was on Persona Shields at an earlier stage. Persona Shields generator grade 1s. But through my testing, I found, okay, while these cards are very good when the deck is like doing what it's supposed to be doing, there are a few games where the fact that this isn't really helping me set up my early game is being a problem. So I ended up taking out the app sheets for Burrow Mushrooms. So we now have effectively 10 cards that do this role, and so you will find them very, very, very consistently. A couple key notes before we really get into it. The self-reviving grade 1, we often do not need anymore, but it's useful to have around, especially into board control matchups. So we still want like 2 copies of it. The ace unit is incredible in this deck. Very, very good, because like if we play down on turn 3 or later, we can revive a Solitario off of it, which is super awesome. I think 4 Great Blaze Omega Blast and 2 Vital Blaze Blast is the absolutely correct order ratio, because you always want to have one for your turn 3s onwards. But you way prefer Great Blaze over Vital Blaze, because Vital Blaze is just like top 5, and like it has that bonus plus 5k effect when you spend it from the plant gauge, which is cool. But this is just not reliable, and it becomes less reliable the further you get into the game. Whereas Great Blaze Omega Blast is just going to be able to revive whatever you specifically need, or flex into creating plant tokens. Like the fact that this can also be used on turn 1 to either set up for your turn 2 to make it easier for you to fill the blast token while also putting up a decent board, but also like it's just very multifunctional. It helps with your going first, going second by just giving you a column in the same way that Burrows would. Very, very good card. Way preferable in the 4-off slot. It's the one that, like, past turn 3, this is the one that you typically want to be resolving. Alright, let's get into the games. Alright, so first we have an example game of going first. This is into Youthberg Phantom with the new DZ-16 cards. So this is a pretty awesome opener. We don't have stuff to get our plant token stuff going, but we have Fredder, who we're always super happy to see. This card's just completely cracked, just does so much. And we have Ace Unit, which is really, really awesome to see this early. We're just gonna toss back the 2 triggers, keep our PG, keep our Fredder, keep our Ace Unit. We draw into Twin Cast, which is really, really awesome, and Burrows, which is gonna make our turn 1, turn 2, sorry, pretty alright, because we don't need to do anything on this turn 1 because we're going first. We just discard the Fredder, get a plant token, yada yada. Brown has a very basic turn 1, we just take a damage, and we discard Twin Cast to go up, get our Vital Blaze Blast. We're gonna first go Mushrooms and create two more tokens, shove them in, get our Blast token draw, and we draw into Fredder, which is really awesome. That means we're gonna have another Fredder discard for our turn 3. We get 4 risks off of our Vital Blaze Blast while Soul Blasting out the Burrow Mushrooms. So if we don't hit anything we want to call off of this off of this ace unit, we can just call back mushrooms, which is what we end up doing. We end up ditching the Val growth and just discarding burrow mushrooms. So yeah, this doesn't quite hit 23 because mushrooms is only 6k, but it's still pretty good. We take the Vanguard swing again, damage another forest, which is annoying, and guard the other side. And here we're just going to get to shove in mushrooms, a token. That was a token, right? Yeah, token and ace unit. I really want to keep the forest around here, and like we can get those out into the into drop zone again without too much difficulty. So we get to we get the Val growth off the top. We revive another Val growth with our Great Blaze Vital Blast. So this is a pretty awesome turn. So we're gonna get to go Val growth with the forest behind it. So this is going to turn into a plant token because the way this interacts is Val growth. The retire and draw are not dependent on each other and are mandatory as long as it's attacked while you have a grade 3 or greater Estacion Vanguard. So that means that end of battle still goes on the stack, though. It still goes on the standby, and you choose which order they happen in. So you can just choose to revolve forest first, retire this whole column, create a plant token, and you'll still draw off of Val growth. Very strong interaction. It was very common to use this sort of thing in Direful Doll, so I'm quite familiar with it. But this is a really aggressive turn 3, the sort of thing you can do. Like 38, this is going to turn into a plant token back here. And typically on these turns, I am basically never going for the 5 attack line, because the 5 attack line isn't representing enough power. Like, it's only representing, like, they're only going to have plus 10 on the 4th and 5th attack if you go for that line. Because you'll only have 7 in the plant gauge at the time that those attacks are happening. So it'll be like 20, 25, and 15, 20, and those just aren't really threatening. So what I tend to do is I'll go for a line with like this, create a new plant token in the back line here. And then when I swing with my Vanguard, I'm just going to go for Solitario for some crit pressure, and also to get some defense access to as well. So we end in a very strong defensive position with a Fredder in the drop zone, a Solitario on the board. We get an additional 5k on the Solitario. Flip a heal that we don't get to use. Swing 43 on the van, thanks to the trigger pumping it up. So that's gonna they're gonna have to PG there to not take that, and we're still gonna put them to 5 with the Val growth, which is the kind of crazy offense that you get even with 4 attack lines on Estacion, which is really, really strong. Really, really strong stuff. This is not a terribly threatening turn from our opponent. The initial Youthberg swing is still so small that we can just easily twin cast it. And then the resist from the Solitario prevents them from retiring it before we're ready to use it. And we're going to use it on the second Vanguard swing to put us in a secure position. And then we're going to use that draw trigger plus a Fredder from the drop to block this 40k Exasperate, really showing the value of those 20ks. And then we take a damage from the single crit swing. And now we get to go up into Kachidoki, and this is one of those scenarios where you're absolutely declaring offense with Kachidoki, because our opponent's already at 5. So it's like, okay, we're just going to declare offense, we're going to go 5 attacks, and we're going to kill our opponent into the sun. They rip a 6 damage heal right off the top, which is not the best for us, but we're still going to put out really, really good numbers here. Right, and on the intercept, we have 2 damage of leeway, we have several PGs in our hand, like... And that's all she wrote. They still couldn't guard through it, even with that 6 damage heal. Next up, we have going second demonstration against Estroya Phantom. This is a deck that can take games pretty long because of how much defense it gets off of that grade 2 that gets plus 5k shield for every card in the order zone. Very strong stuff. We have a good opener here. Lots of very nice cards here. We have Great Blaze to help set up our initial rush, as well as Forest. I'm gonna hold it back in this scenario. Because with the cards I wanted to call, I would have had to call one behind the back row, and that would have gotten overcalled by the blast token. And that's not really something I'm about here. So we just go for a more basic line. We're not hitting over trigger no matter what we do in this scenario, so just going Fredder discard, call Forest is more than enough for me. And they do in fact hit a trigger here, so it is what it is. And they get to tri-lane me with the power of Strega. They rip a crit off their Vanguard, and we're going to go to 3 pretty much immediately, unfortunately, off that. There wasn't a whole lot we could do about it. We could have guarded the Vanguard swing for a simple 15 and taken whatever they give the crit to. That probably would have been the better line to consider. But I'm still pretty comfortable in this position. We're going to get some good counter rush here. They're gonna go Elmer, which is already at plus 15k shield. It's already a 20k shield. Like crazy card. One of the best attributes of this deck, to be honest. But yeah, they're gonna run up to grade 3 first, of course. They call out an Elmer here so that they have that available to intercept, because it also works on intercept, and we don't exactly have any retire. And they have their Resander, but this Resander doesn't work at all here because we're only on grade 2. So this is going to be a very basic 3-attack turn for us to live through. And not a fantastic hand for guarding, but we do get there. Taking that 3 damage early was really not great. But we're going to go Ace Unit, call back the Solitario. So this is a line that's going to allow us to end on double Solitario, which is going to really help us stabilize here. And they're going to Elmer our Vanguard, so that's going to be no pass whatsoever. We heal in front, which is pretty awesome here. And I'm feeling pretty comfortable now with 2 damage of leeway and just this massive defenses that, like, as I said, the typical builds that you're seeing going around wouldn't be able to put up this sort of defense because they don't run 2 Solitario. Like, the most any of them are running are 1 Solitario, and I just think that's incorrect. I just think, like, the Solitario is so much more flexible in the deck now because of Kachidoki's ability to revive it and activate its effects. So, like, Solitario just works out so much better in the deck now, especially since you have a much better long game because of Kachidoki. Regardless, continuing on. So now we have to deal with the actual full output turn. They do the Valship landline to give their front row even more power. So, like, this is going to be a 5-attack turn with some pretty nasty offense, I cannot lie. We don't rip a damage trigger. We do rip a heal trigger that does not go off, but we get some power that we kind of desperately need here. So it's going to be 48. We'll guard that with a front plus 1 of our Solitarios. And then the other side, we're going to be able to guard with heal plus twin cast. Easily enough. We'll chuck that Solitario into our blast gauge to fill it up. We'll be able to empty it out with the cost if we want to end up calling it. But our opponent's at 5 here, so it is time to go aggressive. So we declare offense. They have to guard with a ton on this simple swing from Granorindo. And we will just, because we already have both Granorindos out of the deck. So right now, we had a Granorindo on the board, right? Let's go back here, because this is important. I think this is important. So right now, we have a Granorindo on the board, and we have a Granorindo in hand. Frick. We can only call from with Estacion's effect from deck or drop, right? However, that's not the only way of making that 5-attack line anymore, because Forest has the same effect of when it's placed, you make a plant token. And the numbers are actually the same, because you're almost never boosting this 4th or 5th Granorindo attack with an 8k. You're always boosting it with a 5k, right? That's typically what's going to happen, or it's going to go unboosted. And in either of those scenarios, Forest makes the exact same numbers. Like, it in effect makes the identical numbers. So there is, all you're losing in that scenario by using Forest for this instead is you lose out on a 5k intercept, which isn't nothing. But it's part of why you're able to super safely go down to 2 Granorindo now, because you have effectively 4 more in your deck for the purposes of doing your multi-attacks. So it is basically impossible for even with one Granarindo, which I was testing at one point, for you to end up in a scenario where you can't do your 5th attack when you want to. So that is, of course, the line we go for here. We flip a front here. It's going to be 50 and then 53. And that's just not going to be enough. So I think that gives a pretty good picture of the deck, how it runs, how strong it feels. It feels very strong to me. But I want to run through some some corner cases, some valuable things the deck is able to do. So this one is going to be against Prison, and this is going to be showcasing how you're able to just completely stifle Prison, which is pretty awesome. In a way that the 0 Solitario builds just aren't able to. For those familiar with enough with Estacion, this probably isn't too much of a surprise, though some of the tools we got in this set allow us to do it more effectively than we were ever able to do it before. So we're going to go aggressively in the early game. We're going second, so they're going to get to grade 4 before we can get a cool Kachidoki. This is back when I was on Appsheet over mushrooms. So we're gonna get the ace unit out of our prison. Pretty nice for us, since it works when called from anywhere. And you get a pretty solid formation here. That trigger is still going to be annoying. We're just gonna have to swing side and then swing Van. They get a draw trigger. Really don't like seeing that. They're at 3 already though, so that's nice for us. And they're gonna imprison quite a lot of things. Swing our side, fearing the effect of the Val growth. And we're going to end up going to 4 here. Now, here's what we get to do. So first up, what I end up doing here is I call over the Fredger with the Granarindo because I want to create a very specific formation here. Yeah. So we're going to call those 2 things out from the prison. And the entire intent here is just to empty out the prison and then call over with this double Val growth line. Yeah, we would have been able to Great Blaze for one of these if we needed to, but we didn't need to here, if I recall correctly. All right. No, we did use one for Great Blaze Blast here. Yeah, we did use one of these here to get the second Val growth. And this is going to let us go Val growth, get Solitario, who cannot be targeted, and thus by miraging here, we're going to get to end our board with the only rears on our board being the stuff that cannot be chosen. In addition, we're going to have no soul. So as a result, when they ride up into the grade 4, they're only going to get the 2 cards from our hand. That's it. And that demands 7 of their 1-for-1 imprisons because we have completely emptied out their prison. And even if they go for that, we have a pretty good defensive profile right now to be able to run through that. And once they realize that that Solitario is not something they can choose, and thus they are only getting just a 2 off of this Seraph because they did not have the security upgrader to get to it, they just forfeit because they know they can't get to the number of prison they need to be a threat at all. Next up, we have a game in which I was testing a different trigger lineup. I typically go 3 crit, 4 front, 4 draw. But for this one, I was testing out 7 front, 4 draw because your damage reach is just really good. You don't need crits that often, and fronts are very, very strong. I really enjoy fronts. They're not as strong here as they would be in a triple drive deck, but they are still quite strong. This is also a game against deep lands, so that's a good showcase of hey, this is a more meta strategy that we're going up against this time. Let me. Yeah, so we open with Granarindo, which is pretty awesome. That's good discard fodder. We don't have a Fredder for discarding, which isn't ideal. So since we have the Great Blaze, we're just going to go, okay, discard Granarindo. I'm going to establish 2 plant tokens in the back row where my opponent can't touch them. And that's going to give me some pretty good setup for my Blast Gauge on turn 2, right? And that's the line there. Our opponent rips a crit on turn 1, which is quite unfortunate for us, but we rip a draw trigger on the damage, which is awesome. Feels fantastic. So we're going to go Burrow's Mushroom, create 2 more plant tokens, then suck in 3 of them for the Blast Gauge, then Vital Blaze Blast. Yeah. We just whiff, I believe, here. Yeah, we just whiffed here. And we just call a plant token as our pity. But since it goes into the gauge, we then get to call out the Grain Orindo and get our full board. So we're still getting really good offense here. And we have Freighter as well. Our opponent misplays a bit there where they didn't remember that Maideth doesn't work on this turn because they didn't use an order, is what it is. They go for a simple tri-lane here, taking out our front line with the Philander and ending up taking out our other front line with the Orgity. And we have our double Valgrowth line. This card is crazy. And we have the Forest, and like, I probably don't need to explain to you the line I'm going for here because I've done it several times before. Forest to get a booster for our Solitario, and we end up with some very solid defense. We rip a front there, which is going to make the Solitario very annoying for our opponent to guard, and our opponent gets sent to 5. Very strong deck going first. Going first on this deck is mean. So our opponent gets out a largely standard board minus the Orgity, but they're using the boosters, which I think is quite strange. That's not a typical thing I see Deep Lands players doing, using the boosters on these early attacks, because it means their post Vanguard springs are going to be much smaller. The Vanguard has the inherited crit, which is a bit nasty. We end up having to take it. We just don't really have a choice, but we rip a damage trigger off that, which just blanks the rest of their attacks because they already used their boosters. And we get to go up into Kachidoki, make Foul Growth, bring back Grain Orindo. Wait, did we? No, we didn't. Did we actually bring back Grain Orindo? Why did I do this? Okay, I'm not sure why I did that. Was it a Vital Blaze Blast or something? I don't know. Doesn't matter. We get our Solitario out in the main phase, which means we get to use Solitario as big man. Not really big man. But we get to swing forward with this, threaten to just kill them even through a Miracle Heal. And we're still doing 5 attacks. Massive amounts of offense here. The way the replay shook out, I didn't actually get to show off any games where like I went for defense, but there are several games I've played with this deck where I've gone like to turn like 6 or 7, 6, 7, and it's just as a result of okay, just keep calling defense until I'm in a position where I know my opponent's in a position where I can really put the screws in, finally run out the resources, and it's time to go, and we just can just last a long time. And lastly, we have the warning, because Estacion still does not have a way to protect the blast token, regenerate it, whatever, when your opponent attacks directly into it. And there is a meta-relevant deck in the format that can do this 100% of the time. If Estacion becomes a popular enough deck that Icon players want to spend 2 card slots total, on auto-winning the matchup, they are capable of it. Because the same order that was a nightmare for the deck in the Vergilla matchup, because Vergilla would just search it, is super accessible to Kai Icon as well, because of Justina, who is a grade 1 that they're going to be able to search with Conroe, and then on turn 3 they're going to be able to call it out, discard a card from their hand, and just grab any order and use it, in which case anyone familiar with this issue of the deck will know that this is the Flame Dragon Bombardment, which allows all of your units this turn to attack your opponent's back row rear guards, which means they're just going to all attack into the blast token. This is particularly bad coming from Overlord, because Overlord has this rear guard effect that when it attacks a rear guard, it can energy blast 3 to restand. So if your opponent has like the right grip, they can belt 6 attacks at your 5k blast token that you have to defend, that you cannot protect against with Fretter or Solitario, because those only work when Estacion is being attacked. And it's just like we'll run through it. I almost managed to guard through this on a fairly weak turn 3. On a stronger turn 3, this would have been far more difficult. But it's just like, yeah, like there's just not much we can do at this point. Like, we lose our ability to multi-attack, we lose our ability to do basically anything, and the moment the blast token goes down, it's unwinnable. And even if we're in a scenario where we have the guard to block through the turn to protect the blast token, they probably can't do it again. However, we do get a bit sacked here, or just whatever. That's not the important thing here. That is not the important thing here. It's just like, you can theoretically guard through it sometimes, but when you do so, you had to use so many resources because you were defending a 5k blast token, that you are going to be crippled for the rest of the game regardless. So this is the one thing to be very aware of if you're queuing Estacion. I know some Kai-Icon players are already like making this a consideration because Estacion has been quite successful in the early DZ-16 format. And just be very aware that this is a matchup roulette that you're signing up for if you ever queue Estacion. And Kai-Icon, of course, not the only deck that can do this. Like, dominated units just get to attack back rows for no reason. So Shiranui gets to do this a bit more. You can defend a bit more against it. Like, anything that isn't using bombardment specifically, you can defend against like a lot more easily. But this is still just a really frustrating part of the deck. That will personally probably prevent me from ever queuing it to a regional, because I really don't want to sign up for that matchup roulette, despite how much I really like this deck and I really enjoy using it. Like, I think this deck is awesome. I think it's a lot of fun, but it does have this really cringe matchup roulette that you just don't have a solution to. It's just a 100-0 matchup. Like, it's just a 100-0 matchup. There's really nothing to say about it. Like maybe a 1% chance of winning if you get really lucky. But it's basically unwinnable. And that's very unfortunate. That's very unfortunate because Kai-Icon is not like a deck you will not see. Like, this does have a pretty solid play rate. And if Kai-Icon players make the assessment that, hey, this is the correct thing for me to be doing, they're going to be doing it. And you're just going to lose. Any Kai-Icon player who's doing it, you're just going to auto lose to. There's just nothing you can do about it. Which is, it sucks. It really sucks. It does. It just really sucks. Deck's awesome. Outside of that, really strong. I think this is one of the best decks that came out of DC-16. But just be aware of that critical weakness the deck has.